You know that down at the Feng Shui Center, and I'm the owner of the Feng Shui Center, every Thursday at noon we have a free lecture, and we have different metaphysical speakers. So we try to get in some of the local speakers and people from out of town when they come through town. So we hope to see you there at the Feng Shui Center every Thursday at noon. And if you want more information about which lecture is coming up, you can call us down at 543-7677. Okay, I also would like to tell everybody about the Oasis Wednesday night series. And Mel and Stephanie run that at Wild Ground. And that's every Wednesday night starting at 7:30. And for more information, you can call them at 327-7977.
Hi, my name is Heidi Truog, and we're here tonight to discuss metaphysical and holistic concepts. We have a really interesting guest with us tonight. His name is Richard Baldoff, and he is a Feng Shui and Geomancy consultant, and he runs Elfin Way services, and we'll give you more information on that later. And I'm really pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Heidi.
And before I forget, you have a bunch of goodies to show us in the second half.
Yes, we have a lot more of these goodies to show people of different sizes and shapes and colors, and we'll show them in the second half of the show, as well as a couple other little things that I brought along.
So I wanted to start out by asking you about Feng Shui, and the best place to start, I think, is to see if you can give us a definition.
Okay, Feng Shui, a general definition, and it's a pretty accurate one, is the placement of people in natural environments. Okay? And natural environments can definitely include homes, since homes are, they sit on the earth.
Right.
Okay? So what a Feng Shui consultant does, and we should talk right off about the fact that there's a number of different schools of Feng Shui, so there are different approaches to Feng Shui.
Okay.
But the basics of Feng Shui are pretty much the same no matter what the school is. Okay. As a consultant, okay, we can go into, and I do go into, both residential and commercial environments. And there's a lot to Feng Shui, an awful lot to Feng Shui. And the big things make a difference, but it's a lot of times it's the little things that are the most important things.
All right.
Okay. We look at the outside environment. We look at, if it's a residential application, we look at the neighborhood it's in.
Okay.
Okay, and same is true with the business also. But we look at, like, what are the streets like? Are there trees around? Are there buildings? Are there buildings that overshadow the building that you're in, for example? That's a very important thing. If you're shadowed by a building, it has a very detrimental effect on your home. We look at landscape. If there is landscape,
right.
Sometimes it's concrete, and nothing more than concrete. But look all around on a property, or if it's in a city environment, I look at what's there. I just look at everything, okay? Observe everything. And the inside of a home, I look at the way the home is put together, okay? I look at, like when I walk in the front entrance, I'm very aware of, is the front entrance defined? How well is that defined? Or what is the main entrance that people go into? That's very, very important.
It is.
And there are some people I've done consults for who they don't want their entrance to be noticed. And that's very intentional on their part.
Okay.
So their main entrance may be a side entrance. You've seen homes where when they face the road, for example, okay, there's no door where facing the road.
Right.
Okay, the door's alongside. Now you may wonder where the entrance is. And if there isn't a clearly defined path, okay, you're not going to find that entrance easily at all. Okay, and for some people that's very detrimental.
All right.
All right, because they literally miss things in their lives. Things bypass them if their entrances aren't defined.
Because they're living in a home like that.
Well, it may be a situation like that, or it could be an entrance that you see the door, but because it isn't clearly defined, like there's a pathway, or maybe the pathway's overgrown with weeds, for example. Okay? Or one of the things in Feng Shui that we try to do is stay away from flat, straight lines when it comes to defining entrances.
Okay.
Okay?
Why is that?
Okay, straight lines are not natural in nature.
Oh, all right.
Okay?
Okay.
They're not natural in nature. And try to have, like I've recommended a couple of times, where people have a somewhat a curved sidewalk, for example,
Right.
or pathway. I call it a pathway because cement isn't always the best thing to be using, but if that's what you use, that's what you use too, or blacktop. Stones, for example, a stone surface or individual stones that are placed appropriately according to the length that people are going to step. Okay, and there's lots of things, but there's lots of ways. It really, each application is so unique and so individual that's what I look at.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you an individual question.
Okay.
My quirky family, my parents and their home, they have a front door. It's a very impressive front door, and the bell doesn't work. And it has a metal grate, and then an alcove, and then the door, so you can't even knock. But their philosophy is anybody who knows us and has been invited knows to go around the back side. And anyone who's ringing at the door, we don't really want to talk to them anyway, because it's probably a salesperson or something like that. What does that do to the energy of the house? Does that do anything?
It can. It really depends on the person's intent. I think the intent, it sounds like, is very, very clear, which is to discourage strangers.
Right.
And if that is what works for the family, your family, then that's the most important thing to me. Okay? Now, I would actually have to see it to see how foreboding or grotesque it might be.
It's rather welcoming. People have been standing out there ringing the doorbell for a long time before. Yeah.
I think when you have something like that, the way you described it, with it's literally layers to get into the house, is what it sounds like to me. Yeah. It may be welcoming, but once you get there, it's not. And that's the intent. And then it's important that, you said that the main entrance is in the back of the house?
Right.
Then it's really important that what leads to the back of the house is defined.
Okay.
All right, for people, and maybe it's just family, friends, and family, hopefully family members too,
Right.
They may know that, but it's still important that it's defined even in that circumstance.
Okay.
All right, as well as possible.
Otherwise that could lead to confusion of
It
anyone who
definitely
goes
leads
in.
to confusion. But the intent in the front is to create confusion, actually. That's the way I would see it, knowing what you just told me.
Right.
And that's okay if that's what they want.
Okay.
Okay? It may affect them energetically in other ways.
All right.
But if that's really their intent, is to discourage people, then that's their intent. And there's nothing right or wrong about it. I don't look at anything as being right or wrong. It really depends on the intent of the people who live in any given or work in any given environment. It's the most important thing. And that is something that I always honor and respect. I mean, I'm a human being, so yes, there are things that I run into at times that I kind of go, oh, that's great. Or I go, oh, yuck. But that is not where my work comes from. It can't. My personal ideas or tastes, I'm me, you're you, your family is your family, or, whoever I'm doing consultation for, my intent is always to do the very best I can, respecting what people need and want in their lives and what their intent is.
And is part of your consultation ever to clarify the intent?
Yes,
Okay.
and in fact, that's an important thing, because one of the ways I do consultations is I go in and I spend time talking to people. I might spend an hour, hour and a half just talking with people and asking them, like, what are you doing with your life? What are you happy in with your life? What aren't you happy with? What would you like to see happen? What are your goals? And also, it's very important to know what kind of lifestyle that people have, or if they want to change their lifestyle. I mean, there's a big difference in going in where you have a mother, a father, and 2 young children, okay? Versus a couple in their mid to late 60s who are retired and looking at, well, I don't need to use these rooms for my children anymore.
Right.
Right? So, okay, how can we do this in a different manner? I mean, it's, it's a completely different way. I mean, the basic principles of Feng Shui apply to anything. However, their application's going to vary, depending on the person's circumstance. Or if you have, for example, if you have a 15-year-old going through puberty, who, let's say at times, are too much so in the parent's perception of going off the wall.
Okay.
Okay? I'm going to look real carefully at her bedroom. I'm going to look at the color. I'm going to look at lighting. Okay, as I would in any room, but I'm going to pay particular attention to how that room is set up.
Okay.
Because there may, let's say the room has an abundance of bright red in it.
Okay.
I'm going to recommend that that be changed. Because that's activating her. Okay, that's activating her. So I'm going to recommend, if I can, I'm going to talk to this young lady. And I say, what colors do you like? What are your favorite colors? What colors do you like? And see out of those colors, a color that I can recommend that's going to work for her.
Okay.
All right? And hopefully, give her more of what she needs in her own environment. Okay? I'm going to look in a house and in a situation like that and see how much electronics are in a room, because electronics affect people.
Okay.
Okay, things like that, for example.
And so things like putting a timer on them in case she falls asleep with the TV and the stereo on, time it so it turns off at midnight? Or?
That's an excellent thing. That's a very excellent thing, because it's really not good to fall asleep with that kind of stimulation going on, because it's going in our head subconsciously anyway. All right? And I know people do it all the time, but it's not a good thing at all.
Okay.
I mean, I can give you a personal thing. Many years ago, I worked 11 to 7 at night. I'd come home in the morning, I'd watch an hour of something like the Today Show or whatever, and then I'd go to bed. And it took me a while to realize that I was putting that stimulation in when I was just got home from work, I'm really tired, and maybe it wasn't an hour, maybe even a half hour. In fact, usually it was like closer to a half hour.
Right.
And I couldn't understand why I wasn't sleeping well, and I changed the pattern and didn't watch anything. I started sleeping an awful lot better and going to sleep easier. Now that's me. Each person is different. Some people, people who live in cities, for example, who are used to a tremendous amount of noise. They come out to a place like Missoulian, and it's like, it's not noisy at night.
Right.
Or anywhere that's rural, where you don't have much noise or lighting stimulation coming in your window, and they can't sleep. So it really depends on the person and what they're used to and that kind of thing in their immediate environments. Okay.
And I want to get back into some particular tips in a minute, but are there ever times where a certain piece of land just shouldn't have a building on it?
Yes. There's many instances of that.
Okay.
And I'll give you what I see as a little larger picture, because for the last number of years, 10 years at least, there's been a tremendous building boom, particularly in rural areas. And as we know, and as the fires here in Montana have very clearly shown, if you build in or near a wooded area, you have to take the risk of fire. You have to take the risk of things like rocks and boulders coming down mountainsides, flooding in certain type of areas, okay? Especially if you build anywhere near a flood zone. And there's a lot of misplacement of buildings, a tremendous amount of misplacement of buildings in this country in general.
Okay.
All right, land that should never have been built on, for reasons ranging from they were sacred burial grounds of Native American tribes that have been literally bulldozed over, and there's been an awful lot of that. Reasons to that, reasons like there are just certain mountainous areas that really, I mean, common sense will tell you, if you put a structure there, you put yourself at risk. It messes up the land flow, the geomancy of the land, and direction is very important in terms of facing buildings. A lot of buildings do not face properly. North and west are very poor directions to face a building.
The front of the building shouldn't be north or west?
No.
If you can help it?
No, not at
Okay.
all. I mean, there's variations on a theme. Sometimes you can face a building like southwest, but even there you have to be careful. You really don't want a building facing west or north. I mean, from a practical standpoint, you don't get much light if you're building particularly to the north, facing north. And to the west sun can be, especially in the summer, when it's very hot and warm. The west sun, you know, if you think about it, you're facing west. West is the place of leaving. The sun rises in the east and it leaves in the west.
Okay.
You know, in a sense, this is more of an analogy where, in a sense, we're born in the east, right? And we cycle around all our lives. You know, we go around the directions. Our lives go in each direction, or in each direction at different times in our lives. But ultimately, we leave through the west. The west is a place of leaving.
All right.
All right? And the west sun can be debilitating, energetically debilitating. I'm not saying it always is in life in general, but in a situation like this, I'll give you a very specific tip. In any environment, especially commercial, if you have an office that's a west-facing office with windows, do not have your desk by a window where, specifically where the sun is coming over on your shoulders. It's very debilitating.
It is.
Yes, it is. Energetically debilitating. And I would guess if something like that was to be researched, it would be found that people's productivity in any kind of work environment especially, and this could apply to home offices too, certainly, that their productivity from mid-afternoon on, drops. That people feel more fatigued, more tired, grumpy, possibly have more fights with their coworkers at that time, and so on and so forth. But this is very well known, at least amongst a lot of people I know who know about things like this.
Right.
And
now, there's also the thing though where I've heard about in Feng Shui where you shouldn't have, if you're next to a hill or a mountain, your back should be to it.
That's generally true, yes.
And now, what if the mountain's in the southwest and the only way to face the house is or the southeast, and the only way to face the house is the northwest? Do you deal with things like that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've not run into a situation like that, so you're asking me a question that's kind of challenging to me.
Okay.
If you have to, what comes to me is that if the house has to be facing that direction, number one, I would really look at your intent in locating in that spot.
Okay.
You
inherited the property, and that's where you wanted to live for a long time.
Okay. Boy, you really make it challenging. Okay. Number one, really look at what your options are in terms of building sites to begin with.
Okay.
Okay. And secondly, no, you don't want to be facing the mountain.
Right.
Okay. You definitely want your mountain as your backdrop, but you can change your entrance.
Okay. All right.
Even if you face northwest, for example, you can change your entrance. Look at options for changing your entrance. The side of it that faces south, for example. Okay. Possibly even the backside. I don't know that there's a problem right off the top of my head. I'm not put myself out on a little limb here, because I can say this generally, that maybe your main entrance can be facing the mountain.
Okay.
All right? Or the main entrance that you use, I want to define that. You might want to put an entrance facing northwest, but the entrance that you use all the time might be south or east.
Okay.
All right? That would be far more acceptable for that person or that family's well-being. Because everything I do is always designed to, the Feng Shui and the Geomancy is all designed for empowerment of people's lives. So I'm not going to suggest something that is a halfway measure. There's a lot of times there's compromises involved.
Right.
Okay. And that's kind of a compromise, definitely.
Okay. And now, in your type of feng shui, do you look at each individual person? Would one person be better suited going through the front door and the other person through the back door if it was a couple? Or?
It really depends on the couple.
Okay.
It really, really depends on the couple or the people in general who are living in the house.
All right.
I would say energetically it's better if you're going to use one entrance, pretty much use that entrance all the time. And not that everyone should. I don't want to put any shoulds into it. But I would recommend that designate a primary entrance. It doesn't mean you never use the other one. It just means that you want your traffic, you want your chi, or life force energy, which is what feng shui is based on, to pretty much flow in one way.
Okay.
All right, in a situation like you're describing, you really want it to come in more through the east or the south.
Okay. And I'm going to nitpick about this.
Okay.
So, what if, we'll just do a really traditional, man goes off to work in the morning and leaves through the side entrance that goes to the garage.
Okay.
And the wife uses the front door to take the stroller out and do her shopping and everything else. They're using different entrances. Is their perception of the house going to be different? Is their energy going to be different?
Yes,
just
it
from
will,
that?
but I don't, in something like that, I don't really foresee a problem. That's a very common scenario where, you have an entrance to the garage in the house.
Right.
Okay, and that isn't necessarily a problem at all.
Okay.
And because I delve as deeply as I do into, call it the human psyche, all right, I would know that. I would ferret out that information because I want to know something like that. It's part of the lifestyle. And I would also ask each of them, if it's possible to ask each of them, I would also ask each of them questions pertaining to their life in general, when they're around each other and when they're not around each other.
Okay.
Without getting, real personal or, just general questions to give me an idea, more of an idea of how they perceive living in the house in general.
All right.
Okay? And because one of the questions I ask people is, what drew you to want to have a feng shui consultation? Okay? Because I can never know enough information. That's the way I look at it. And I make it a point to gather as much as I can, respecting the people and respecting their space. Okay? Because it really helps me to do the very best job I can for them when I do a consultation. So something like that is I would ask them questions about, like I said, their life and how they perceive their house and their environment, how it really does feel to them.
So, I would imagine a couple common ones, we'll just talk about residential, are prosperity and first I was thinking about relations between the people, but also health.
Those are three biggies.
Those are three biggies.
Oh yeah, they're all three biggies. I will look for, in feng shui there's something called the bagua, which determines where in an environment, like your prosperity corner is, where your relationship corner is, and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And health corner and like the center. Okay, because some houses don't have much of a center in them. Modern houses don't have much of a center in them. And in fact, now that I think of it, it isn't just modern houses. There are some older, much, much older houses that have no center either.
And that's important.
Oh, very important.
Okay.
If you don't have a center, then you have individual, a lot of times, enclaves, all right? And you will find that the family gets split up into these individual enclaves. It might be bedrooms, it might be living areas, it might be a kitchen, okay? So these little enclaves, there's no gathering place. And you see neighborhoods like this. I started noticing this long before I got into feng shui. I was living in the Southeast Florida area, and they, which was booming, just build, build, build. You look at whole neighborhoods where there's no center. to the neighborhoods. A lot of cul-de-sacs, dead ends.
Right.
That can be worked with. There are problems involved with cul-de-sacs and dead ends.
Usually those are the most desirous pieces of property.
Really? Well,
'Cause there's not as much
energetic
traffic.
problems with them. I understand why they're desirable, but there's some real energetic problems with cul-de-sacs.
Okay.
All right, there can be. For example, if you're driving, let's say the road comes in to the cul-de-sac, all right? Do this, I forget, you know, there's cameras, okay. The road comes in straight and you have a round cul-de-sac.
Right.
The only plus is that it's a half circle. If you have a house right here, this cul-de-sac, all the flow of that street is coming right into your home.
Ah, okay.
Okay? And especially, but not exclusively, if your driveway is sitting there too, and you drive up into your driveway. Okay? The problem with that is that all that street energy, even if it's quiet, even if there isn't much traffic, and a lot of cul-de-sacs, of course, people don't know their cul-de-sacs, strangers in the area, they're looking for their friend's house for Thanksgiving or something, and it's like they wind up and they come down this road. And that's confusing energy, because the people are confused, they don't know where they are, and you're getting that right up your driveway, right into your home. Now there's what are called recommendations and cures. All right, so we can deal with that, because you're not going to pick up your home and move it.
Right.
You know, most people aren't anyway. The vast majority of people are not. It's like, I like this house. Okay?
What would be a common solution? Curve the driveway, put a hill in front of your house?
And something like that, a lot of times you can, landscaping. Landscaping.
All right.
Okay, depending on how much lawn area you have, how much area there is in front of the house, and around, coming along sides of the house, various forms of landscaping, okay, can really be very, very helpful to that kind of a situation.
This just made me think of a childhood friend. Her father lived at the point of a T street. One street went this way, and another street went here, and his house was right at that point. And they actually had many drivers drive right into their front porch, up over the curb. And they finally had to build those metal poles there. Obviously a cul-de-sac, you probably wouldn't get too much of that because people have to make the curve, but energy-wise it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. And T-intersections are, of course it's a dime a dozen, but something I do not recommend unless you totally fall in love and say, this is where I'm supposed to be, this is what my body's telling me I'm supposed to be, where I'm supposed to be, and this is absolutely where I have to live. Don't buy a house on a T-intersection, or even one house over either way.
Really?
Yeah.
Still too close.
Yeah, it is. And if you have one, there are cures. There are things that can be done. A lot of times, a situation like that, one thing that comes to mind is two things, prosperity and, well, all three, the three things. All right, prosperity, health, and good relationships. Yeah. If a person who is in your audience here is living at a T-intersection, a cul-de-sac, ask yourselves, what are your relationships like in general? I don't just mean your marriage or living companion. What is your relationships like with your family? What are your relationships like with your friends? What are you attracting in your life? You know, how do you feel health-wise in general? How, look at all those things. And if there are things that are, like I always say to people, a lot of things with Feng Shui are common sense. In a situation like that, sure, look at what you can do.
Okay.
Okay, always look at what you can do. All right? And then, there are Feng Shui consultants. It's become more and more popular all over the country. And there are several in Missoula, for example. Okay? Call us. Talk to us. See who you're comfortable with. Because different approaches, different strokes for different folks. There may be an approach, my approach may work very well for a person. Somebody else's approach may work very well, may work better for a person. Okay? Or maybe their approach doesn't work as well for somebody, and maybe my approach will. I always recommend see who you are comfortable with, who feels the best for you. and who feels right for you. Yes, this is my business. I love it when I get calls and people are really interested, and I got a call recently from out of state. It's a consultation I will do later on in the fall when I can get there. And the lady had been researching Feng Shui. She'd been reading, she had a couple of books, and she was fascinated with Feng Shui. And she found my website. And she'd gone through a number of websites, and mine happened to feel, she told me flat out, yours felt the most comfortable, gave me the information in the way that it works. So, different strokes for different folks, but don't hesitate to call.
Why don't we give out your website right now? It's www.elfinway.com, and that's ELFINWAY.com. www.elfinway.com. And you have an 800 number? Well, it's a toll-free number. It's 1-877, it's one of the new toll-free numbers, 641-0790. It's 1-877-641-0790. And that's a free call to anybody who calls you.
Right. I would also mention that the local Missoulian number, it's the same line as this, is 241-0790. Okay?
241-0790.
That's correct.
For the 406 area code.
That's correct.
Okay. And let's shift a little bit and talk about geomancy.
Geomancy, okay.
First of all, what does the word mean?
All right, geomancy can be applied to what I'm going to describe, as well as a lot of Feng Shui, excuse me, a lot of Feng Shui, people who do Feng Shui are also called Feng Shui geomancers.
All right.
Okay. If you do Feng Shui, a lot of times it's called that you're a geomancer. All right. It's a little different application than the way I use the term. The same definition as Feng Shui really applies to geomancy. They're two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
And they're very related. They dovetail. They're very related because the flow of qi, or life force energy, which goes in and around a property or a piece of land in a home, okay, it's in essence the same thing. All right. Geomancy, though, the way that I work with geomancy is working with what are called the earth grids, right? The energetic earth grids that are both electromagnetic.
All right.
And over the years, there's been more and more research, scientific research, into these grids. There's machines that are being developed and experimented with to see how much of this energy can be measured and defined and weighed and everything that the scientists do. There are people, I have several friends who are much more scientifically oriented with this than I am, okay? And their work is incredible work, what they're finding, all right, what they're finding out. That isn't my forte with it. My forte with it is a very, very intuitive forte. All right? I've been able to see these things all my life. Didn't know what they were until the late 80s.
Okay. What are these things?
All right, and they're lines. They look like lines, and they shape the earth. They energetically hold the earth together.
And is it a rectangular or square grid? No. How is it?
Now, let me explain something, Heidi, because everybody has their own way of seeing, intuitive seeing. And the way that, if I can even describe the way that I see, and I can to a degree, and a lot of it I have no words for, may not be the way that somebody else sees it. And it's not a matter of right or wrong in any way, okay? So when I say to you, I do see lines in all kinds of configurations. Yes, I see lines that, over short distances, the lines look straight. They're not.
Okay.
Okay, and they're not, when I say a grid, part of the grid, or part of the way that I see the grid, is, yes, kind of maybe in a rectangular fashion, all right? But that is far from the way that I see the entire grid, because the grids cross, and they cross at different angles in different ways.
Okay.
Human beings mess up the grid more than any other factor. There's natural factors, the grid shifts, all right, and there's natural factors in that. But human beings, and especially human emotions, have a major effect on the way the grid is and what happens with the grid. Grid lines get broken, they get misaligned.
You mean like when we redirect a river or something? Will that do anything?
Oh yes.
Okay.
It most certainly does. Not that all human movement, or something like the movement of a stream bed, that's a nice example, isn't necessarily detrimental.
Okay. Because beavers do the same thing when they make their dams. Right. And is that a detriment?
No.
Okay.
Not necessarily. Not at all. I have to qualify this because I have learned over the last 15 years, almost 15 years, that there's intent of purpose has a lot to do with how the grids get affected energetically, and where they go, and that kind of thing. All right?
But most people would never say that they have intent to break a grid line. So what kind of intent are you talking about?
Okay. I'm talking about lack of knowledge, lack of understanding of the land. All right? Because, no, people may not have that intent, inherently have that intent, but they might have that intent on a very subtle level because they want what they want. When we're talking about building before, you build in a place, and you see, I've seen, you know, if I come on very strongly to your audience about some of what I say, it's because when I see energetically the effect of a misplaced building, I see energetically pollution. Believe me, it's far worse to see it energetically than even physically, as horrible as it can be physically. And I've just gotten to the point, and I am not a eco-fascist, okay? I'm not an extremist, but I do believe in balance, okay? And when I see what I see, and when I've had to go in and straighten out energetically, whether it's been in directly because somebody's called me, or because I've been out in the woods and I've seen what I've seen, and I've been, in a sense, called to do something, and I've trusted that over the years, and it's like it's always worked out, thank God, because I've learned to trust it. We are inherently part of the land.
Right.
As human beings, we are tied into the Earth Mother. It is our heritage. It is, and fortunately, there are many people who are starting to really, really understand this. You don't go plunking a building where it doesn't need to be. Okay, you find ways of doing things in a different manner. Okay, and so, like I said, you know, some of this may come across as because it is how I really feel. And I've had to learn not to be judgmental. I'm very strong-willed, and I definitely feel very strongly, but I've also had to learn how not to suspend judgment, or to suspend judgment about what I see, because that would get in the way of my work. And when I see what I see, sometimes, yes, I used to get really angry a lot. And then I realized that anger serves its purpose, but a lot of times it doesn't. So when I look at these things in misplaced buildings, concrete foundations, and I'm not saying we shouldn't use concrete foundations, but just be aware. If you're putting in a new building, folks, it's like, call it a qualified, somebody who knows what they're doing in terms of geomancy, because I can shift the lines for the purposes of building. I've never run across new construction where the ley lines weren't shattered right in that area. And I've had to take care of a lot of stuff like that. All right, and it's very doable, but why break them to begin with? Because it really disrupts the flow in a much larger area.
And it doesn't have to happen?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Okay, I'll give you an example of where I grew up back in upstate New York, where, it's 4 miles from where I lived, okay, and where my parents' home still is. And it's in a village. And back 10, 12 years ago, this was an area, there was a large field, kind of swampy, but not, it was kind of a semi-wetland. Very large area. I would say it was probably, or large area for the environment. I'm seeing it in my head, and I realize nobody would have a picture of this unless they'd actually seen it. Okay, where they built a development, starter home type development. They put a lot of houses in there. They drained it. They filled it. Well, you know what the result was? There's more rats, rodents, trying to think. Oh, problems. The original development that came out that street to the new development, okay, that had been there for many, many years, okay. Problems with cracks in swimming pools and foundations because of the land shift. A lot more rats and rodents and that kind of thing. On my website, I have, there's a link on my website that goes to, it's a reference. One of the references on there is from a woman who 4 years ago she had a real serious rat problem. For 2 years, nothing would get rid of these rats, absolutely nothing. And they tried everything. Exterminators, poison, I mean, like you would not believe. It was like affecting them very seriously. Yeah. And I had gone back to the area for a while, and I was astounded because these are people who never heard of geomancy. I have much better languaging today than I did to help people to try to make it clear, because I want what I do understood to the greatest degree possible. I want people to know what I'm doing. I want them to know what it can do for them. I want them to at least get a feel for what geomancy is, because geomancy is really, really important work in this world. And at least in my humble opinion. At any rate, there's, I talked with them. And at one point I remember Don saying, I don't really understand it, but something feels like I want to do this.
So he followed his instincts.
Yeah, he did. So I went ahead and did the work. And, people have their challenges, because I like working with people. And I said to Ann, she called me about 4 days later, and she said, they've all left, except for one. We've got one underneath, and that's all that's there. That's all we're hearing. There's only one. And I said, okay, Ann, what you have to do, because it was a crawl space, and I said to her, what you have to do is open the door. Open the crawl space door, because it can't get out. It hasn't found the way to get out that the others did. I just knew that. I said, open that crawl space door. I said, it will leave, because it does not want to be there. Believe me, it does not. And she said, but if I leave it open, others are going to come in. And I said, okay, this is your part of it. I've done everything that I can do for you. This is your part of it, is to face your fear. That rat will leave. You have to trust. Not me. You have to trust yourself. It has nothing to do with me at this point. It did, but I don't want to say it didn't, but it was her responsibility to take an appropriate action. And the appropriate action came out in leaving that door open, but the real thing was to face some fear that she had. It probably involved rodents. But it was really trusting herself, trusting it was part of her process. And to her credit, she not only did that, but she understood when I said to her about facing her fear, she got it, totally got it. And she said, okay, I get it, I gotta do this, And because we're all responsible for our lives, all right? We're responsible for the choices we make. And all I can do is say, this is what I see, this is what I recommend. I do this all the time. Believe me, I do.
And then people have to decide to act on it.
And they have to choose to act on it. And every time people choose to act on it, and a lot of times, people know. they know what they have to do. And sometimes, like, you know, we're all this way. It's like sometimes we have to have a little impetus, okay? And it usually comes from others who go, okay, you got to do this. You can do this. You really can. And, you know, I've had people do that for me in my life, too. You know, like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. You know, but, and then it's like, you know what you have to do. Oh, okay. And just do it. And it really does make a difference when people choose to do what they really know is right.
So their house is critter-free now?
It's been critter-free for 4 years.
Oh, great.
And they have never come back. But this is all related to, this is a house next to this other development. And they have lived in this house for years. They never had problems with rats or anything.
Until the new one was built.
Right, and their swimming pool wound up getting, you know, like the cement size of their pool because of the land shift.
So we affect the land and each other and the ley lines.
Everything is so connected.
Now we're going to take a short break, and when we get back I want to talk to you more about what it is you're doing with the geomancy, what it is you're doing with the ley lines, and get a little more insight into that, and look at all the goodies you brought to share with us today.
Okay.
So please, everybody, stay tuned with us, and we'll be back with Richard Baldoff, a Feng Shui and Geomancy consultant. Thank you.
My name is Aaron Meyer. I'm a concert violinist from Portland, Oregon, and I'm going to play a couple of excerpts from my latest record, Near the Edge. This piece that I'm going to start with is called Ricochet. It's the second cut on my record, and if you'd like to listen to some of it with my full band, you can do so on my website at www.aaronmeyer.com.
Music. I wanted to thank Rainbow's End for the beautiful dress tonight, and if we could get a close-up of it, this is the first of the goodies to show you that Richard brought. He distributes these beautiful pendants, necklaces, and we've got lots more goodies right now. And Richard Baldoff is with us, and he is a geomancy and feng shui consultant and distributes a lot of fun toys. You don't mind if I call them toys, do you?
Not at all.
Okay.
Because for some people they are. And I want to say a couple of things. What you're going to be seeing, most of what you're going to be seeing, I have a couple other little things I want to show people also, are crystal wands. They're made by a woman named Gemma Dumont, and she lives in Pennsylvania. Okay. And I've known Gemma for 3 years. And I do distribute these, both wholesale and retail, but business is business. At the same time, I want your audience to understand that the reason I handle these isn't so much business as it is that I absolutely, totally love these things. And so do many, many people who have purchased these over the course of a number of years. Gemma's been doing this a long time. And these wands and pendants.
Let me just hold one up while you're talking.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah, these wands and pendants are...
This is the tag here.
The intent that Gemma has in making these is that in her way of being of service to people, crystals amplify whatever energy is put in them, all right? And nobody has to do something to put energy through, okay? And there's a variety of crystals she uses of all kinds that come from all over the place, all over the world. This happens to be the one that you're holding up right now. If I remember correctly, yes, that's a Swiss smoky, okay, the crystal is, and it comes from Switzerland. Gemma draws her crystals from all over the place. And these ones, as you can see, they're beautiful. They're just sheer beauty. And I love it when I see people have wands in their hands that they resonate with, all right? Because each wand, even though Gemma knows that every time she makes a wand, that it's for a specific person, even if though she usually doesn't meet the people, all right?
And that's what I want to hear about are some of the stories.
Okay.
What happens to people when these come into their lives?
Well, when I can tell you that a person knows.
Hold up a different one.
A person knows when they hold a specific wand in their hands or a pendant, how it feels to them, all right? And if it resonates with them, okay? And most of the time, it's interesting. Almost all the time, when a wand is supposed to go to a specific person under any circumstances, they feel it in their heart. All right?
Okay.
They feel it in their heart area. And one of the stories that I have is was of a young lady. She was 16 at the time, who was somebody I had met when she was 12. In fact, I had met her and her mother, and they were friends of a friend of mine in Florida. And I was down there on a geomancy feng shui job, commercial job, and I was visiting my friend. And she had some friends over to look at the wands and to see me, because these are people I had met a few years before when I was down there. And they, and this young lady, I'll call her Sue, Sue came over, and there was this wand. It was a little bit, it was taller than the one you're holding up right now. It was kind of between that size and a larger wand. And she's standing in the living room, and her hands went around the wand. Both hands went around this wand. She stood there, and then finally sat down, kind of plopped down on the couch behind her for an hour holding this wand. And she would not let go of it. Not that I cared that if she let go of it or not, but she would not let go of this wand. And she kept going, oh my gosh, and just kept feeling, you know, the between her and the wand. It was like her and the wand, just looking at them and energetically feeling them, feeling the connection between the two of them. It was like they were one being. And she was like so excited and nervous, and it was like this wand was hers. It just simply totally resonated with her. And that's how people know. And they know what's right and they know what isn't for them. Okay, the one you're holding right now, that is what's called a rainbow. Call that a rainbow. It's all the colors of the chakras. Okay? And people, a lot of people like those rainbows too.
It's really cute.
Yeah, they are cute. And they also come in, yes. They also come in this size also.
Yeah.
Okay? And each wand, you know, these are not manufactured on some assembly line. Each piece is put together individually. Each wand, each pendant. The crystals are selected very carefully for each one. Gemma feels which crystal needs to go with a particular wand. I should explain that these are copper tubes, and copper, of course, is a grounding element.
Okay.
Okay?
That's in the rainbow one. Okay.
Okay, all of them are the copper tubes.
Oh, they all have copper tubes. Okay.
That's correct.
Inside.
And I only have what I, have with me here at this point in time. Colors can vary. I don't have a wide selection of colors in this batch, but...
So this one has wild turkey feathers on it.
Yep, those are wild turkey feathers.
So this connects you, I imagine, to the animals' strengths as well.
That's true. And to the birds, that's correct.
And do you ever use these in your geomancy?
Yes, I do. It's really funny because I've always worked, my body is my dowsing implement, and that's one thing. In the geomancy work, I've always gone through what feels in my body, what I feel in my body, and then as it translates into my mind, really. But when I first met Gemma, and I was never attracted to wands, I'd seen a couple different kinds, but I was never drawn to them until I saw Gemma's. And then I was like, I remember walking into her house and seeing her work area with all these partially completed wands and a few finished ones, and I went, oh my gosh, I was just blown away. And my first wand, my first personal wand, I started working with that. And the best part for me is that I don't need them, but I love having them. And they work with me. My own wands and I are like, we're just like, there's no separation. So, yes, I do use them quite often in my geomancy work because I just like working with them, and they're a real asset. They're a real asset. And to explain a little bit more about what these wands, some of the intent behind the creation of these wands has to do with a lot of people use them in healing work. Okay? Some people, and I don't sit in this space with them at all personally, but I have a friend who bought a small wand. I don't have any small wands with me. They're about this size. Okay? And it happened to be a white one. And she had a job where she worked for 17 years as a collector, an outside collector for a power company, where she'd go to people's houses and have to collect money or shut off their power. Okay,
Lovely.
She did this for many years. And she bought this wand, and what she told me was that she always carried that wand with her in her purse, okay, or in whatever carry bag she had, and she said that she always felt she felt like that wand was bringing out protection for her. Because she went into some really bad neighborhoods on that job, okay, and that kind of thing. And she always felt very protected by it. I have used wands a couple times in Feng Shui jobs, placement, where the people would choose to have the wands or purchase the wands separately, and I would place them for energetic flow in their home. And so they can be used for that purpose. They can be used if somebody just wants an object of beauty.
Right.
If that's what it is for them. There doesn't have to be any complex reasons.
Now, why does this one have a crystal at both ends?
Okay, it's called double terminated crystal. Okay. Gemma makes a lot of them like that. Okay,
and this one
she makes
happens
a lot
to
of
be
them
a
like
clear crystal and a tourmaline, the green one, if it's showing
green
up.
tourmaline, yeah.
There's green tourmaline.
And some of them are singles.
So for people that aren't familiar with the energy of crystals, can you give a little background on that?
Okay, different crystals work in different ways. I am not an expert on what crystals can do, different crystals can do. I know a few things, but I'm not really well versed, in all honesty, on what they all can do. Gemma knows a lot more about that than I do. But different crystals, like for example, there's crystals that are good for grounding. Okay, there's crystals that are good for, for example, for helping move or open up energies in the chakras. Okay, there are crystals that are good for transmuting, just what's called transmutation of energy. I didn't bring any selenite with me, but selenite, good quality selenite, which is also some crystal, loose crystal that I have available, as well as Herkimer diamond crystals.
What is transmuting energy?
Okay, that's taking and completely changing the flow of energy, completely changing it into a form that is just completely different, totally different.
I mean, is it like taking anger and transmuting it back into the passion that is its source?
It could be. It depends on intent. Again, it depends on intent, yes. Selenite. You can take selenite, for example, because this is one I'm more familiar with. You can take crystals that need cleansing and clearing and put them on a piece of selenite.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and selenite will transmute that energy, will clear that energy. It's really, really good at it. Selenite's also happens to be a crystal that can be used in healing and clearing also. But
now this is a simple one.
Yes, it is.
From outward appearances. Now this one has a Herkimer on top. A Herkimer diamond comes from Herkimer, New York.
That's correct, or that area of New York.
Okay, and a tourmaline on the end. So I'm going to have you do your, what should I call it? Your sensitive work, and let me know what kind of energy would that bring to your life, if this is something you wore.
I like this too, and I like Herkimer, so.
Yeah.
This particular piece, for me, brings out more the ability to focus.
Okay.
Okay. And there's also a playful element for me with this piece. It's a cute little piece. I don't get many like these, but it's a cute little piece. And that stirs something in me of, oh, this is a cute little piece. We can play, you know, so it brings out that. But always in a focused manner that isn't limiting.
Okay.
Okay. And I should explain too, the pieces, any given piece, you know, some people might have absolutely no affinity for it all. I mean, somebody else could pick up this piece and go, ugh, you know, and it's like, no, this isn't for me.
Right.
Actually, people are not usually in any way negative about them, even if they have no affinity for a particular piece. Like, I've never seen people be negative about them. That's interesting. But that's what it brings out for me. That's what it brings out for me. It's a really very interesting little piece. It's a powerful little piece. Sometimes the small ones, I don't want your audience to think that size has anything to do with what a given wand can do and what it's capable of. Little pieces like this can blow your socks off in a really good way, okay? And so it's not, size has nothing to do with it. Type of crystal, yes, definitely has something to do with the type of what that crystal is about and what that wand can do for you. Okay? But again, wands can be very individual and are very individual. Very much so.
And so the woman who makes these gemmas, she also does the bead work. This is a really colorful, pretty one.
Yes, it is. She does all the bead work. She's an excellent bead person. And I've known people who, I know at least 3 people who are just incredible with beadwork, and they have a tremendous respect for her beadwork.
Yeah.
And she's been doing this for a number of years, 14, 15 years, I think. And she was taught by her mother,
Yeah.
who made wands. And Gemma, of course, has evolved into her own style over the years. But her mother taught her how to do that. And since Gemma's a dear friend, I've watched Gemma evolve in 3 years too, and there are changes in her work. They reflect changes in her life, and she puts a lot into them, and she's very, very conscious about what she's doing. And you can see it. You really can see it in her work, and I feel very honored to represent her work.
Now, for anybody who knows anything about the Rider-Waite deck of the tarot, my husband and I noticed immediately that this looks like the 2 pillars, I think they're in the right order, that go around the High Priestess. She has a white pillar and a black pillar, both signifying different energies, states of being. And these struck us right away as being the white and the black pillar of the High Priestess. She holds the Akashic Records, so she's a really powerful lady. And while I'm holding these, I wanted to ask about, maybe when you've got one on your chest too, you've got a really nice piece. If you were doing your geomancy work with one of these wands, can you explain a really brief summary of how that would look and feel to you?
Well, for one thing, after a while I wouldn't be conscious that I'm holding the wand, because I always hold the wands, like, almost always hold them basically from my throat chakra down to the 2nd chakra, or ground, or root chakra even. And after a little bit I wouldn't be conscious I'd be holding the wand, because it would just be, it's just there, and I wouldn't notice it. So it's working with me, and I'm not usually a lot of times conscious of what the wand is doing, because it's me. It's me and the wand. And it will amplify what I'm feeling in terms of, I'm not talking about emotional feeling, I'm talking about the feeling of the earth, what I'm seeing, what I'm picking up. Okay, it definitely amplifies it. And the wands will, as I stated before, they will, crystals, their nature, any given crystal, their nature is to amplify energy. So again, intent is very important. And what you put out is what you get back. Goes around, comes around. And I say that to people. It's like, do what is right and what feels right with the wands. If the wand is yours, you can sit and read a book and have it in your lap. You don't have to do anything. Or you can do whatever you want. Okay?
So let me ask more, though. I'm getting back to your work. You can go back to the one where the lady and the man had rodents, or another
Rats.
one. What does your work consist of to move a line or reconnect a line?
Okay, in this case, I had to look at a very wide area, because I had to see what attracted the rodents to come in to begin with.
Right.
And I looked at the ley lines, and there was a vortex on what's commonly called a vortex. 2 or more lines that cross in any way create what's called a vortex, and there's all kinds of vortexes. Vortexes are very, very common. It isn't just in places like Sedona that you have vortexes, okay?
Right.
Although those are interesting vortexes there, very interesting vortexes, as in when I was in Glastonbury, England, the same thing.
And we're supposed to have one here at Lolo.
Mm-hmm.
Lolo is supposed to be a strong one.
And there's some very strong ones up at Rattlesnake Wilderness, too.
Okay.
At any rate, in that case, there was a vortex, all right? But when I looked in a much wider area, because I had to trace the lines, the lines had been broken, and I can't remember now, but at least in 2 or 3 different places, lines had been broken. When you have a broken line, I call it a rogue line, because the energy can just spew around anywhere, and it doesn't, there's no direction to it. So it's almost like it sucks that part of the line dry in a way, in a manner of speaking. So I had to reconnect the lines, okay? And then I had to look at the flows coming through that new development, and watch what those flows were doing as they were coming towards their house and under their house, and I had to shift some lines is what I had to do. I had to move them so that they would flow easier and in accordance to the larger part of the grid in that area too. So it was real, and it shifted the whole energy flow.
So did these lines have a consciousness? Did you talk to them, or did you become part of them? Did you channel it through yourself to lay them straight, or?
You know, a lot of times I'm not always sure, Heidi.
Oh, okay.
And I've learned that I trust the process. The lines, at least in my opinion, the lines have a consciousness all their own, and once you give them the direction, they will naturally find where they need to go. Back into where because to put it one way, yes, they do know. Okay? And I'm just kind of this, at times, I feel like an energetic traffic cop. Okay? And the beauty of it for me is that I love to watch the energies flow and dance. Sometimes I just sit there once it's realigned and I just grin, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, how beautiful, because at least in my way of seeing it, as I want to reiterate, it isn't just seeing visually, it's also feeling, which is all the same thing. People don't have to, and many people are not real visual, but they feel.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how people do it. Everybody has their own way of seeing, and I really want to emphasize that. My way of seeing or going about it is not the only way. There's lots of ways. And I would suggest, too, that people really, when I started getting really conscious of the lines in the late 80s, I spent 2 or 3 years just observing. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know there was anything to do. I mean, and I just started observing everything. And I watched flows, particularly in mountain areas, because I love the mountains. I'm a mountain person, and I lived in the mountains. And at that time, and I would go hiking, winter, summer, it didn't matter, and I would just watch the flows. Just watch where they were going, watch where they were jammed, watch what they were doing. Just observed it, and that's how, they taught me. Okay, they really, really taught me. Okay? And observation is a very important part of my work, even to this day, and always will be. Okay? And there's so much more to it than I could ever put into words. And I love it. I just love it. I'm really very grateful for the fact that I can see these things, and that other people can too. And for people to try to understand, if I say that water dowsing, if people are familiar with water dowsing, all I'm doing is energy dowsing. I do water work too, but my real forte is pure energy dowsing. I love water, but water and I have a funny relationship at times, and water, and I'm getting more and more attuned to certain aspects of water too. You know.
I'm really grateful that you've come on the show.
It's been fun to be here.
Yeah, it's been great. And I wanted to give out your information again. Richard Baldoff, you're a Feng Shui and Geomancy consultant, and you have Elfin Way Services as your company. And your website address is www.elfinway.com. It's ELFINWAY. And your toll-free number outside of the area is 877-641-0790. And your local number is?
241-0790.
And you wanted to read to us a short passage from?
This is from a book called Words That Shine Both Ways by Dr. Richard Moss, who is a man, he's a consciousness teacher, he's a man that I have a tremendous respect for. And I just want to read one passage, because this is a passage that has helped me enormously, and this book is just full of things like this. Just care. You can't save your life, so care. You can't get conscious in the hope that it will keep you from getting a disease, so care. You can't be assured that awakening won't make you crazy, so just care. In the end, when all of your strategies for salvation don't work, will you be able to stop in the existential nakedness of yourself, wounded beyond knowing, naked, absolutely naked, and pick yourself up and access your will to be nothing but caring? As our acceptance deepens, compassion awakens. And I really just wanted to share that. It is one of, I've read a lot of things by Richard, and I've met the man too, and went through one of his experiential conferences, and all I can say is that this is, the gems that he has have had very deep personal meaning to me, very much so, and I just really felt that I wanted to share that.
Well, thanks for coming and sharing all these things that are so important to your life.
Thank you for having me.
You're
It's
welcome.
been a pleasure, Heidi.
Thanks, Richard. And thank you very much for being with us, and hope to see you again next week.
There was one very important group of people I forgot to thank when I was going through those thank yous, and that is you. Thank you. Missoula has been very kind to me so far, so I appreciate your support. CD, which I'm going to donate to a group called Creating Hope International, which is working for the rights of Afghani women and girls in Afghanistan, where they not even allowed to go to school if you're a girl, not even allowed to learn how to read. In fact, you can't even walk outside your house if you're a woman without a man to accompany you. Not even to go to the doctor if you're dying. This seems like a situation which needs to be rectified. So if you buy the CD, I'll shoot him $1, and hopefully it'll do some good in the long run. Sometimes his land is coming up, sometimes it holds nothing when it goes. I'm shivering violin. Thank you, we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Including Dave from MCAT.
Not to mention, then you regret anything you would have done since countless beginningless lives to harm any living being, that the imprints of which are now in your consciousness. You happily regret them. And then you think, well, who can I turn to? Give me the medicine, the purifier. So in this context, you then go to the power of reliance. Reliance in this context upon the
That'll make them happy.
in a way, is like strong sense of compassion for yourself. You have to purify this poison because you do not want the future suffering. You have to purify. You have to regret this negative actions because you don't want the suffering yourself, karmically, to come to you. So it's a very wholesome, powerful, empowered sort of attitude, not a guilty, I am so terrible attitude. This is not appropriate. The second one, the power of reliance, you rely upon the Buddha. Whom can I turn to? Thank you very much, Mr. Buddha. Very sensible practices, I want to use them. And then you rely upon the very sentient beings you've harmed, but now you have this sense of compassion for them, wishing to benefit them as opposed to harm them in the future. That's the power of reliance. And the third one is you do the practice. You take the medicine. In this context, the one in Vajrasattva. Visualize certain things, say certain mantras. Said to be very powerful practice. But anything, it could be saving animals, could be this, any meditation you have. That's the power of the antidote, which purifies the lower realm karmic result, the main karmic result of negative karma. And the fourth one, determination. If there are certain actions that you can definitely say, I will never do again, like a lion, let's say. For example, absolutely, as Lama Zopa says, don't say, I will never do again. Don't lie to yourself if you know the habits very deep. The ones you really can say you will never do again, they make this powerful promise. Then the others, to the best of your ability, you will make determination to change, to set new grooves for yourself. This is the idea. These are the four opponent powers. This is the purification process. And as Lama Yeshe says, having done this, you go to bed with a happy mind. And as Lama Zopa says, you'd be foolish not to do this every day if you truly understand this process of karma. But as many moments as there are in this day is as many karmic seeds that we have planted in our mind stream. Logically, given that we're still samsaric, most of them perhaps are negative. Not necessarily Hitler-type negative, but coming from delusion, coming from the neurotic eye, coming from attachment, coming from pride, coming from anger. So we live in negative imprints in the mind. How foolish not to do some weeding every night, If you only weed your garden every 6 months, you're in trouble, right? So you've got to do some weeding every day. It's just, it's just part of the way to practice, So you go to bed with a happy mind. Wake up the next day, off you go. Slowly, gradually moulding yourself into the person you want to become. So good. But what's interesting, the major obstacle to all of this comprehension is this grasping at this concrete, solid, real, this, that, blah, 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 me. And one of the characteristics of this grasping is, well, this is who I am, and there's like, therefore I can't change. And it even actually feels that way, doesn't it? We don't see ourselves changing from moment to moment, I mean in a positive or negative way. We don't see it. We don't notice the karma, being created. We don't see the karmic results in the future. So we kind of think there's this big fat need going from moment to moment that's unchangeable somehow.